Wine can be unpredictable and mysterious, sensual, sacred, romantic. It is a language used to tell the story of place, of the land, and the people. Wine connects us to the natural world and to each other.
Grape growing, I would say, can be one of the most romantic of occupations. When you're in the vineyard, you are out there realizing a craft that's millennia old, worldwide.
You're dealing with something that has been here for thousands of years. It makes you realize that you're part of something bigger than yourself.
It is a very romantic and a very magical industry to be a part of. We're making wine that people can have with their friends and family and creating memories. So we're giving joy.
What's more romantic than continuing a tradition that humanity has incorporated with itself for so long?
The Finger Lakes wine story began in the 1820s with the first planting of grapes in the small town of Hammondsport by a minister intent on making sacramental wine. By the mid-19th century, farmers were sending table grapes to New York City, where they were in high demand for their fruity flavor. Wineries began to appear. The first, Pleasant Valley Wine Company, was founded in 1860. Others, like the Urbana Wine Company, later known as Gold Seal, and the Taylor Wine Company followed.
It was a booming area with thousands of people growing grapes, building wineries, building barrels, selling wine. There were resorts around the lake. There were steamboats going up and down.
And they would have 1,000 people between 3 steamships with live bands on every boat, and they would have planks between them and lights strung, and they would dance all night long to these live bands.
By the turn of the 20th century, there were about 22,000 acres of grapes around this little lake and 27 wineries. There was hardly a tree between the lake and a mile up the hill.
Today, the entire Finger Lakes AVA, New York State's largest wine region, has about 11,000 acres. The lake and region were thriving. Then came Prohibition.
The largest winery in the country was the Virginia Dare Wine Company right on Bluff Point. And they had a couple hundred families working the grapes because everything was done by hand back then and with horses. Following Prohibition, most of the grapes were abandoned around the lake, and all but a handful of the wineries eventually closed.
A return to those booming times would be a long uphill climb for several reasons. Native grapes, the ones sought after as table grapes, were not thought of quite so favorably by wine experts. After all, wine had been made in Europe for thousands of years. People had spent centuries becoming accustomed to the fine Vitis vinifera grapes such as Chardonnay and Pinot, which they considered superior for winemaking.
Native grapes happen to be very good for dessert wines. They had a reputation, the word foxy was people used to call them.
The problem? Since the 17th century, European settlers had tried to grow vinifera grapes in the eastern United States and failed. Thomas Jefferson brought grape cuttings back from a trip to France with the goal of making exceptional wines. But he, like everyone else, failed. It was eventually believed that the fine European-style wines couldn't be grown here. Wineries like Pleasant Valley and later Bully Hill began experimenting with hybrids.
This started as an experimental hybrid farm in the 50s. Braden Taylor, who was my grandfather, decided that he wanted something that had a little bit more of the European flavor profile. Grapes like Baco, grapes like Seyval, grapes like Ravat, they had more of the characteristics of the wines that he had tasted from Europe, but they had the cold hardiness of the native grapes.
Hybrids offered flavor profiles closer to those found in Europe, but there were still differences. 2 men in particular helped with the biggest step forward. Charles Fournier, a respected French winemaker at Gold Seal, and Dr. Constantine Frank, a Ukrainian immigrant and viticulturist who insisted that vinifera could be grown here. Fournier gave him the chance to prove it.
It can't be understated how important Charles Fournier was for the Finger Lakes. He was able to kind of bridge the gap between natives and hybrids and vinifera.
The vinifera revolution that began with Constantine Frank in tandem with Gold Seal Vineyards was clearly a milestone advancement for what this region is today and what its direction would become.
We were really the start of what would become sort of a revolution in American winemaking. My great-grandfather immigrated here from Ukraine, and he was the first to successfully plant the European species of wine grapes, like Riesling, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay. The key to his success was he showed this grafting technique, which was commonplace in Europe, where you graft the American rootstock like a puzzle piece with Vitis vinifera, the European variety.
The ability to grow such diverse types of grapes means winemakers around Keuka could now make a wide range of wines, from award-winning ice wines and dessert wines to world-class Rieslings.
The history of winemaking is essentially a basket of currencies. We are a place that has natives. We are a place that have hybrids. We are a place that has vinifera. All of those allow flexibility in a way that you don't see in other regions. That's what makes us unique.
Of course, variety alone couldn't transform a region known for fruity wines to a destination considered today by sommeliers and wine connoisseurs as one of the best in the world. Quality was essential, and that quality brings us to two distinct traits that seem to distinguish the Finger Lakes from other regions: the inherent collaborative spirit of the winemakers and their willingness to share knowledge with each other and with others, and the place itself, meaning the soil, climate, landscape, or what is known as terroir.
The challenging part is getting it right all the way through the process.
It's a lot of hard work growing the grapes, bringing them to maximum quality, and the same with the winemaking. Everything has to be done carefully. There's a lot to learn. In the early days, we all worked together to improve our winemaking knowledge.
One winery doesn't make a region. Everyone needs to be on top of their game. We're learning a lot from Dr. Franks. We're learning a lot from Hunt Country. Pleasant Valley has been around for so long that everyone is learning a lot from them.
Art Hunt said it best years ago: we don't compete against each other, we compete with each other. We try to outdo each other by making as great of a wine as we can and impressing each other with it to hopefully get us to push each other harder.
To be able to have that institutional knowledge has been so important, not just to us, but to grape growers and winemakers all over the region.
Constantine had area winemakers, vineyard managers from all over the eastern United States and all throughout the Finger Lakes come work with him, learn that grafting technique, take it back to their home state, and created this renaissance in quality winemaking.
When people first started growing vinifera in this area, they were only really growing white wines like Riesling and a little bit of Chardonnay.
Today we're seen as America's leading producer of Riesling, and we're building upon it with our sparkling wines, with our cool climate aromatic wines, with our Pinot Noir, with our Cabernet Franc as well.
What seemed to lag behind some of the white varietals is the red wine making program. That has been probably the greatest sticking point to getting recognition from the wine world to be a serious wine region. And I think that in the last 20 years specifically has really just grown tremendously and become very viable on the world stage.
The Finger Lakes is a beautiful place to live. It's a beautiful place to visit. It's also a perfect environment to plant fantastic quality grapes.
That has sort of been the story of why grapes grow so well in the Finger Lakes, or why the wines are so good.
Terroir addresses the soil, the lakes, the water, the precipitation, the hillsides, the 13,000 years of detritus that's built up and created the soils that we're growing these grapes in, and creating grapes that offer a particular characteristic
We have very rocky, acidic soils on Keuka Lake, very high content of shale.
But also with the sunshine and the slopes in our growing season, it gives us those wonderful orchard fruit characters that come through in our wines, red or white.
Terroir is not only the land, it's not only the weather, it's not only the lake, it's also the people. We have very passionate farmers working the land, multi-generational family businesses, and we do this because we love to do this, and I think that shows in the final product.
If you want to go even further with terroir, it expands to the culture of the winemaking world in this area. I've been told over and over again what a communal sense of camaraderie we have amongst each other.
When you consider the quality of the wine, the variety of flavor profiles, the stunning landscape, the unpretentious and collaborative nature of the people here, there are few places that can compare.
People have a really deep emotional connection to Keuka Lake, and I think the wine industry is really special because it's one of the rare times when people go to the actual place where the grapes are being grown and the wine is being made. Everybody in the industry works really, really hard, and so hopefully all the visitors will come and appreciate all the work that goes into creating this beautiful, delicious, relaxing, fun experience.
You never plant a vineyard for yourself. The fruits of your labor won't be seen for sometimes 50 years until the vines are fully mature. So you plant a vineyard for your children and your grandchildren. It's about the next generation. It's continuing the legacy.
We've got one of the most spectacular views, regardless of where you are on the lake. So to get to look out and see that view every day, to carry on a tradition, to grow things, to do something that enhances people's lives, the future looks great for wineries around Keuka Lake.
Each day, more and more people are discovering this exceptional wine destination that has been right in their backyard all this time.
We are a drivable distance from Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, New York, DC, Boston, even Toronto. For them to come and kind of experience something that is different, that is more serene, that kind of lets you to get away from everything, but still providing the amenities that you are expected in a much larger area, I think is like the perfect fit for a lot of people to visit.